Okay, today we're up to Samech Hey Amid Aleph. We did the Mishnah yesterday, and we're discussing the Oila Sa'if. So let's go through outside what we know so far, and we'll add to it either by bringing sources for it or just making comparisons and contrasts between the two. Okay, so the Chata Sa'if, we said, was done below on the southwest corner. The Kohen went ahead. He did Malika. He cut, I'm going with Rashi Shita. He cut one siman. Again, Shchita, guys, by oif, you only have one of the simanim, either the trachea or the esophagus. You don't need both, as opposed to a behema. And he cut one. He would be maza, and then he would do mitzui. He would go ahead and push it against the wall of the southwest corner of the mizbeach, below the chut hasikra. The oilas oif was done above, and it was done on the southeast. It was, you would go ahead, you go up, you would turn to the sovev. Now, one Monday Yom Hill, you did it at the top of the Mizbeach. One said you did it on the sovev, the lower. That was 6 amas above. 6 amas, again, if the Mizbeach was 9 amas and 10 amas, including the Keren, this was at 6. He would go ahead, he would do Malika, both simanim, separate the head, do mitzvah on the head, salt it and burn it. Do mitzvah on the guf, salt it and burn it. Those are the two. Okay. So now we're discussing really the oilasayv today, and the pasuk says, "V'krivu akayin el mizbeach." The kohen will bring it to the mizbeach. The it being important. Umalakas roishai, he would go ahead and do malika. V'hikdir hamizbecha, and he would burn it on the mizbeach. V'nimtza damai al kir hamizbeach. And again, notice the order. He'd burn it and be mitzvah dam. We're going to see that they have to explain that. You can't go ahead and burn something and then do mitzvah. Mitzvah obviously has to take place before the act of haktara. Okay, says the Tanur Rabbanan. V'krivoi, ma tamud loymar. L'fishenema, because it says, v'hikriv min hatoyrim, oy min b'nei yaina. It says which kind of, again, you're speaking about an oil that we bought as an edava. So you have a choice. You have a choice. You could either bring a tar or ben yaina. Now, it says double. It says tayrim plural, ben yaina plural. Yachal misnadev. A person makes an adava to bring an oila sa'if. La yifchais mishnei predim. He should not bring less than 2 birds. Tamad leima v'hikri vai. Samachayim et alef nasim. V'hikri vai. You bring it. We began the Gemara with 4 lines down. V'hikri vai. You bring it. You don't have to bring 2 birds. You only have to bring 1 bird. Afilu prei the achas. Yavi. Elam mizbeach. Matam loymar. Excuse me. Afilu prei the achas yavi elam mizbeach. Matam loymar hakayin. Why did again the pasuk says the grivoi hakayin elam mizbeach? Why does it have to say kayin? Likvaya la kayin, to be kaiveya that the malika has to be done by a kayin. Sheyachol, that it doesn't have to be done by a kayin. Valei dinhu. Uma ben soin. Shekavalite safin. Like kavalite kayin. If you're bringing a carbon oila, fellas, or any other carbon behema, we all know by now that shchita is kasher bizarre, that you don't need to be a kayin to do shchita. Now, I would say, since shchita's cover is bizarre, and it is more chomer the oilas ha'oif, the oilas ha-behema than the oilas ha'oif, because you need safin, and nonetheless, like cover like kayin, oif shall like cover like safin, an oif that does not have to be in the north, it can be any other place. So memela, the oif is less stringent. Einay din is not a kavachaymesh like yikva like kayin, that you should not need a kayin. Again, madach chatas, which is so severe, it needs, excuse me, madach oila, behema, needs north. Nonetheless, a zar can be shaykhet. Oila sa'oif, which does not need north, ain't a din that a zar should do malika. On that, Talmud Leimar ela kayin, likvoya like kayin, to go ahead one and be kaveya kayin. So that's when it says v'krivu kayin is to avoid that the limit from the Kalvachaymer, and tell me that in Achinami. The Kalvachaymer would tell me that a Zar could do it, therefore the Pasuk has to tell me no, not a Zar can't do it, Dafka Kayin. Yochel Yilmakenu Bisakin. I might think you do malika with a knife and not what? And not your nail. I might, again, shchita is done with a knife. Where do we ever have a part of a person's body being used to go ahead and cut, and right? It doesn't make any sense. The svara would always be you use some type of vessel. So I would think yachol yumlakenu b'sakin v'dinhu uma im shchita shalei kavala kayin kavala kli shchita, which you're not kaveya kayin. A zar can do it. Nonetheless, you need a kli. Malika shekavala kayin ain't din shekavala kli. Talmud leimar kayin umalak v'hikiva kayin al misbeach umalak esreishay umalak. Dafka kayin does malika, and dafka with his atzmai does malika, not al yedei what? A kli, not a knife. Rabbi Akiva v'chisala daitcha shezar karav l'gabi misbeach. How could you have a havamina, fellas, that the zor could do shchita, malika, that you would need a pasuk to tell me the kain does it? Again, the rule of thumb in limudim is that if the Torah wouldn't tell it to me, I wouldn't know it. If the Torah wouldn't tell it to me, I wouldn't know it. So if the Torah wouldn't say kain, meaning I would think that a zor could do it, what are you talking about? Like you had a pasuk. Says Rabbi Kiva, where's malika done? It's done either on the sayvev or on top of the mizbeach. A zor can't go on the mizbeach. Again, it's not bitzafin. Fellas, it's got to be either on the sayvev, the small ramp, or on top. A zor can't go there. He's not allowed to even walk bein ulu and mizbeach, let alone go up on the mizbeach. So says Rabbi Akiva, why would I have a havamina that a zor could do malika, that I need a pasuk to tell me you can't do malika? It's not possible. Malika is done on the mizbeach. So therefore, Rabbi Akiva says you need a different limud from the kayin. When it says kayin, what does it teach me? Says so. Rabbi Akiva very geshmak. All right. Elamatam lem kayin sheiti malika ba'atzma shel kayin. Okay, meaning it has to be done with himself, not what, not a kli. He uses those, the kayin himself, the atzma shel kayin does it, not the kli. So therefore, it has to be done with the nail. Yachil mekenu bein milmayla ben milmata. Again, where is this taking place? The oila sa'if, above the chura sikra, right? I might think he could do it below. Talmud leimar umolak v'hiktir. Again, the pasuk that we're darshaning, v'hikva kayin al mizbech umolak es roishay. He's molak the roishay v'hiktir. Now he does malika v'hiktir and he burns. Ma haktorah b'roishay mizbeach. Just like Haktorah is at the top of the Mizbeach, because that's where the Maracha is, Af Malika B'Rosh HaMizbeach. So to Malika would be what? B'Rosh HaMizbeach, according to this Tana. Okay, you have to do Malika at a place where what? The Hikdir, you can burn it. Umalak, Mimul Oirif. Umalak says what? You do it where? The back of the neck. In other words, when you do Malika, Shchita, we do the throat, we do it in the front. So I would say malika also you do in the front. It says by chatas, fellas. It says v'mina oif oilakar. It says v'hevior similar kayin v'hikaris isha lechatas. It says and umalak asoisha mimul arpoi v'layavdil. So it doesn't say oirif the back by oila. It says it by chatas, and we're going to learn out oila sa'oif from chatas sa'oif. Just like chatas sa'oif is mimul oirif from the back and not the front, so to oila sa'oif. Umalak. Maybe the neck itself, v'dinhu, nemekanu molek, v'nemalahalan molek, malahalan mimolarif, afkamen moloirif. You'll ask, imalahalan molka ve'ena mavdil. There, you'd only do one siman. Again, Rashi Shita, Malika, and only one siman. First by line, siman. Abkan moilik ve'ena mavdil. So too, you would say over here by chatas, by oilas oif, right? Tamad loymar umolek ve'hikdir. Mahak Torah haroish la'atzmai v'aguf la'atzmai, af malika haroish la'atzmai v'aguf la'atzmai. Okay, now we're going to see in a second. Fellas, in order for the head and the body to be severed, obviously you have to cut both simanim, or else to be connected. So, when the pasuk says, umolak v'hiktir, that we're darshaning, just like the haktorah of the roish is separate from the body, so too, when you do the malika, you have to separate from the body. Now, how do you know the roish by mark is separate from the body? The pasuk already said v'hiktir. Hariyaktorah guf amrua. You already told me you're burning the body. Hamani mekayim v'hiktir hamizbecha. The pasuk says v'hiktir hamizbecha. So why do you have to say it twice? It's speaking about Haktara Rosh. So Memela, you know it's separate. So right now we know, again, these Pesukim are all teaching us the protocol for Oilis Ha'if. Why do we know? It's got to be above the Chud HaSikra. You got to go ahead and both get Simanim. And not only have to get the Simanim, you separate it and you go ahead and you throw in Mizbech. Be aware, the Rambam is of the opinion, even by Chatas Ha'if, you need both Simanim. So don't say it automatically, Hava Hatalia, both Simanim and separating the head. That's Rashi's Shita. The Rambam says no. The Rambam says the by the Chatas lo yavdil, and yet you're doing both simanim, so they are independent of each other. Pasuk says v'nimtza damai. The pasuk says v'nimtza damai. You should go ahead. What v'hiktam is becha v'nimtza damai. By the oilus oif, you do mitzvah, you press its blood kulay. As opposed, fellas, to the Chatas oif, you're being maza the blood and then doing mitzui. And as we're going to see, it's machlekes whether you have to do mitzui or not by the chatas. The only avoida is mitzui. The only avoida is mitzui and burning it. But the only avoida is mitzui. And therefore you need all of its blood. Kulai. Where you need? So it says al kiram mizbeach. You do mitzvah on kiram mizbeach. V'lo al kiram keves. Not on you don't push it against the ramp. We had the same Gemara by Chatas Life. You don't push it against what? The Heichel, the Ezek here Elyon. So this is the upper what? This is the upper part of the Mizbeach. Ayin El Kira Tachto, maybe the lower part. Bidinhu. Ma Behema. Again, it's always good to know, guys, it's opposites. Chatas Behema is above, Chatas Life is below. Oilus Behema is below, Oilus Life is above. It's always the opposite by the Chatas and the Oila, to remember the birds. We pretty much remember that behema, that chatas, you need saviv the koronos. So if chatas is above by behema, it's below by bird. Oila, which is below by behema, is above by bird. Now, with this in mind, how do you know that you have to put it on the upper part? V'dinu ma behema shechatasa lemaila. A behema chatas is above. Oilasa lemata, and the carbon behema is below. Oif shechatase lamata, oilus oif, which is above, which is below. Oilus shechatase lamata, an oilus behema which is below. Ein edin shelasa lamata. Certainly it should be below. Ma the chatas, which is above, the oilus below. Certainly the oilus which is below, the oif should be below. Right? If the behemoths are below, it should also be below. Tamaloima umolach v'hiktir v'nimtze damai. It says you do malika, you burn it, and then you do mitzvah adam. Guys, it doesn't make sense. Look at the order. You're killing it, you're burning it, and then you do mitzvah adam. You can't burn it and then do mitzvah adam. Guys, you can't burn it and do mitzvah adam. It's out of order. Would it enter your mind after you burn it? You're going to go, and there's no blood left. It says, just like Haktorah takes place at the top, Af mitzui b'rosh hamizbeach. So guys, when it says v'hiktir v'nimsal, here's the limud. B'makom dehiktir, the place where you burn it, that's nimsa, that's the place you do mitzui. Where do you burn it? On top. Where do you do mitzui? On top. Haketzad, oila b'kevesh, upoin l'soif. If you go up the main ramp a little bit, you turn to the right, to the east, to the small ramp, ubaloi l'keren droimis mizrachis. You go up 6 amis, and now you're 3 amis away from the upper part of the southeast. When he's on the soivev, he would do malika. He would go ahead, umavdil, he would separate the head from the body. Umematzi midom al kerem mizbeach, and he would do mitzvah al kerem mizbeach. And it seems that we said he did. The Mishnah said he did it separately. He did the rosh separately, and he did the guf separately. And we saw yesterday in the Mishnah, it's the mitzvah haguf, which is the akavoida. If he misses the mitzvah what of the rosh, it's not ma'akiv. The mitzvah of the body is ma'akiv, not the mitzvah rosh. Imasol lemata miraglav afilu ama kshera. And if he does mitzvah afilu an ama below his feet, it's kasha. It's geshmak, guys. A person standing on the soivev is 6 amis above. The chud sikra is 5, so he can go ahead and do an amma below, and it'll still be above the chud sikra. So again, he's standing on the sovev, he still has an amma to play with to make sure that the mitzvah of the dam of the oilus oif is above the chud sikra. Rav Nachman disagrees. Rav Nechemia, Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rav Nechemia, Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov say, Kol atzma einasis el b'rosh hamizbeach. Everything is done on Rosh Hamizbeach. Guys, we need the molach v'hiktir. You need to go ahead, what? Do Haktorah and burn it. You need to do Haktorah and burn it. Good? My binayu. So again, according to the Tanakama, you're on the Soivev. According to Rav Nechemia and Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov, you're on top of the Mizbeach. My binayu. Now, obviously, my binayu doesn't mean what's the difference. The difference is obviously when the Gemara is a good rule of thumb. When the Gemara asks my binayu, it usually means what's the halachic nafkamina. Over here, the halachic nafkamina is clear. Whether you're on the Soivev when you're top of the Mizbeach. The Gemara's question over here is what's the svaras hamachloikis, fellas? My binayu. What with svaras hamachloikis? Abayi v'Rabbi Nemet Shavayu oisem arach al gabi Soivev. You would be able to go ahead and make what? So no, the shayla is umolik v'hiktir. So if you could make a maracha on the Soivev, you could be yoitza oil v'hiktir. That's the Tanakama. Since you could do that, therefore I can go ahead and be moilik on the side of the Mizbeach. And the other one says, no, you can't do that. The male you have to do it top. So I'm sorry, this is not pshat. But yeah, this is really not as far as Samachlois. It's explaining. Yeah, I guess it is the Svaras HaMachlokas. I'll explain it this way. Let me explain a little better. We want to know why Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov requires you to be on top and not on the Soivev. We all know above the Chut HaSikra is considered Lamaila. If you have to do Oil Lamaila, you're there, you're Yaitza, right? You're Yaitza. So here's the question. So why do Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov hold you have to be on top of Mizbeach? Because they hold you can't make a Marach on the Soivev. If I can't make a marach on the soivev, I can't be umalak v'hiktir. I can't do malika and burn it. I can't do malika and burn it. Yeah. So memela, I have to be on top of mizbeach where there's a maracha. According to the Tanakama, no, you could since you could make a maracha on the soivev, you can mekayim umalak v'hiktir. That's as far as we can do. Okay. Now, by the chatas oif, you don't remove anything. Lo yavdil, keep the head intact. You do hazah, and we said yesterday, the kohen eats the whole thing. By the oilas ha'oif, you had to remove something, right? The Mishnah said you have to remove the moirasai b'nait sasa. Now, so what exactly is that? Again, I'm not familiar with the anatomy of a bird, but it seems that there is a place for storage called the moirah. It was called a crap. And Rashi brings in Chumash that birds, they steal. So they store it in that crop, in that place. The CROP is the English word. And since that, we can't have it on the Mizbeach. That seems to be the time of the crop. So the question is exactly what are you removing? The question over here is, what exactly are you removing? It says you come to the guf, and you take out the meirah, and its feathers, and the b'nei me'ayin, the yotzim mehem, and whatever comes out with it. Tana Rabbanan. We have three shittas. The heises murasle b'nei tzasa, right? Marasle is zefek. That's the crop. Yochel yakdir. I might think you take a knife and you cut around it with sakin. V'yitleno, you take out only the zefek. Tamid leima b'nei tzasa. The feathers. When you take out the crop, you take out the feathers that are covering it as well. That's the first shita. Abba Yosef ben Chanan Aimer. You take the zefek. You take the kurkavana with you. Rashi seems to say a dove of mois. You take some of the excrement with it. That the storage it's in that tank. The baby Shmuel Tana b'nait sasa b'nait shala. Right. You have to take its feathers and not other feathers. What would you do? Therefore, koideres b'sakin k'min aruba. You go ahead and cut around the heart not the heart. You cut around where the zefek is with the very surgically, and you would take out the zefek with its feathers. Shisa v'lei hevdil. Okay, the pasuk said that you should take it. You should go ahead, and the body. You should shisa cut the body in half. However, lei hivdil, keep it intact. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan v'shisa. Ein shisa el biyad. It's not when you're separating the oilas oif. It's what? It's biyad. It's with your hand. The Chinuim, it says by Shimshon, by Yeshaseu kishesa hagadi. Shimshon runs into a lion, and the Navi tells us he ripped apart the lion like you rip apart a gedi, and that was with his hands. So just like Shimshon with his hands, the lashon of shisa is also with your hands. Okay. Now the Gemara, next piece of Gemara is not that easy. So that's not so easy. I have a chart. I may use it. I may not use it depending upon the level of understanding. Okay. Chata Sa'if. What would the order be of Chata Sa'if? So you did what's called Malika using a nail. The nail would go through Mul Oirif. Guys, you're talking about the nail would have to go through the bone in the back. That was the Taisus in Yuma Memtes I said yesterday, why it's such a hard malacha. The Kohen's nail had to be so strong, not only to cut. To cut, it didn't have to be strong, it had to be sharp. To go through bone, it had to be very, very strong. So therefore, you would go through the Mul Oirif, you would pierce the spinal column, that's the mafrekas, and then you would, without cutting any meat, without cutting roif basar, you would get one of the simanim. So this is the chatas oif. So once he gets through the neck and he gets one siman, right, he would cut basar also. So as he pierces the neck, no roif basar, by chatas oif, he then goes ahead, he cuts one siman along with the majority of the meat, and as a result, he doesn't even cut the second siman. But since there is an action between the first siman and the second siman, that would cause what's called shehiyah, delaying. So let's see what we have so far. Let's see the Gemara. Okay, let's see the Gemara. Masisin loikreb elazar Reb Shimon. The Mishnah that says that he removes the Meirah and he's mavdil b'chata sa'oif is puzzle is not like Reb Shimon. Guys, here's the key to the sugya is the fourth line down in Rashi. Masnisin diktani hivdil b'malikas chatas shemolka b'shnei simanim puzzle like Reb Elazar. Again, when we say lo yavdil, according to Rashi, you didn't cut two simanim, you only cut one. So now when the Mishnah says hivdil, it means you cut both simanim. So the Tanakama says you cut both simanim, it's no good. However, it's not like Rav Elazar Reb Shimon who says it would be good. And that's the rest of the daf, guys. Guys, the rest of the daf is the machloikus between the Tanakama and Rav Elazar Reb Shimon. The Tanakama is saying if you cut both simanim by chatas oif, it's a no-no. According to Reb Shimon, if you cut both simanim by the chatas, again, not the oilus oif, by the chatas oif, it's what it is. It's okay. I heard that if you're mavdil, b'di'evet, if you're mavdil, it's okay. Meaning, my binayu, what's the svaras hamachlekes? Rav Chisda, mitzui chatas ha'oif ma'akiv ikabinayu, where the mitzui of chatas ha'oif is required. Now, guys, here's the eye contact and listening. Here's the rest of the sugya. We want to make a distinction that the chatas ha'oif is not like the oilus ha'oif. We want to make a distinction that the chatas ha'oif is not like the oilus ha'oif. Now, if oilus ha'oif we know needs mitzui, what happens if chatas ha'oif doesn't need mitzui? You don't need mitzui. Then l'chara you have a distinction. What happens if chatas ha'oif does need mitzui? Then the only distinction you would have l'chara, besides hazah, I don't know why hazah they don't count, is the fact that you are not mavdil. So, if I have, here's the key. I want chatas oif to be distinction. I don't want it to look like oilus oif. I don't want chatas oif to look like oilus oif. So I have to find a distinction. How to separate the two? If mitzui doesn't separate the two, then havdalah must separate the two. So says the Tanakama the following: if you're mavdil, it's puzzle. You know why? Because Tanakama Sava mitzui chatas oif ma'akiv. The mitzui, I have to do mitzui. I have to do it. So I have to do it by chatas, and I know I have to do it by oila. What other distinction am I going to have besides taking off the head or not, cutting the two simanim or not, right? Not taking off the head, cutting the simanim. The Mele Tanakama says it's puzzle. The kivin the mitzui dam ma'akiv ka'avid. You're doing Maisa Oilas b'chatas ha'oif, In Chatas Oif, you're doing it. Did that make any sense? Okay, let's break out the chart. Shimon, I sent it to your phone. Yeah. The Tanakhama says, here's this, guys. I'm so it's not so it's so clear. It's a pencil chart. Can you see it? So if you moilik both simanim by chatas oif, what's the din? You're not supposed to. You're only supposed to do one. What happens if you do two? Says the Tanakhama it's puzzle. Says Rabbi Lazar it's kasha. Like the Tanakhama, you know why it's puzzle? Because mitzui chatas ma'akiv. I have to do mitzvah by chatas oif. If I have to do mitzvah by chatas oif, it's going to look just like eilas oif. It's going to look like eilas oif. So therefore, if I'm mavdil, I'm not going to have a distinction. Therefore, lo yavdil, don't separate it. And if you do, it's puzzle. Says Rabbi Loza, mitzvah chatas lo ma'akiv. I don't have to do it. I don't have to do mitzvah. So since I don't have to do mitzvah, I have a distinction. It's not going to look like the chatas is not going to look like an oila, guys. You know why it's not going to look like an oila? Because in oila you have to do mitzvah, and the chatas you don't. So memela, if I'm mavdil, it's okay because I still didn't do maisa oila because oila requires mitzvah and this doesn't. Guys, let's kasha. Oila is above the chut hasikra and chatas is below the chut hasikra. So you have a distinction. Everything, forget mitzvah, forget everything. Aren't you keen to tell the difference? So you look at Tosfos. Tosfos says, the third Tosfos down, Ka'avin ma'isa oilas b'chatas, masha zeh ma'ila v'zeh lemata le'choshev le'shinoi. That it's in different spots is not considered a shinoi. It seems the shinoi has to be in the guf of the bird itself. It can't be, it has to be a guf in the bird itself. So that would explain why hiza, guys. Maybe hiza, right? When you do hiza, it's not in the body itself. Okay, guys, look at me. I'm feeling tremendous silence in the crowd. We're going to get this. I'm going to do my best. We want a distinction between chatas soif and oila soif. Off the bat, I'm giving you two distinctions. One, the oila soif is above, the chatas soif is below. Two, the chatas soif you're maza, and the oila soif you're not maza. I'm taking that off the way. The distinction has to be in the animal, in the bird itself. Both location and hazah are external. You didn't make a difference in the bird. Good. So now let's look at the bird. What's the difference? I have mitzui by oila soif. I may have it by chatas soif. I have mavdil by oila soif. I have lo yavdil by chatas soif. What's a shaila? If you do have havdalah by chatas soif, now do you have a distinction? If mitzvah is required, you have a distinction. If mitzvah is not required, right? If mitzvah is not required, then you have a distinction. If mitzvah is required, then you don't have a distinction. That's the machlokes, right? It's the first machlokes, guys. Now maybe it's a little better now. Look at the chart. According to the Tanakhama, mitzvah chatas is required. So if by chatas it's required and by oil it's required, the only distinction I have is the simanim. Therefore, if I cut both, I don't have a distinction. Therefore, it's puzzle. Like Rabbi Lezer, no. Mitzvah, I have a distinction. You don't have to do mitzvah bechatas oif. Since you don't have to do mitzvah bechatas oif, I have a distinction because oil you definitely do have to do it. And memela what? Memela, it would if I do havdalah, it would not be ma'akiv. Because why? Because I have a distinction. Okay, the next one requires a little more. The Seder of Malikas Chatas Oif. The Seder of Malikas Chatas Oif. Number one, the nail through Mul Oirif, it goes through the spinal cord, and you're not cutting Roiv Basar. Two, you go through, you cut one simin, and you cut Roiv Basar. You cut one simin and Basar around the neck until Roiv Basar, up until. Three, This process of one siman and cutting the basar would be an act of delaying, and delaying by shchita is a psul. The question is it a psul by malika or not? So naturally, Shahiyah, since it takes place before Rav Basar, since Rav Basar takes place before the second siman, you'd have Shahiyah. Now, if you hold Shahiyah b'siman sheni is ma'akiv, if you hold Shahiyah delaying in the second siman is ma'akiv, you must cut through both simanim before Rav Basar. So now, let's see another distinction. Guys, remember, what do we need? We need a distinction. Okay, the Tanakama says, Shahiyah b'siman sheni boilasoif le ma'akiv. So, if I delay, by chatas, automatically you're going to delay, fellas. Listen. By chatas, automatically, since you do one siman and then you do basar, you're delaying before cutting the second siman. Since it's not ma'akiv, by what? By the oila, the only distinction you would have is whether you're mavdil or not. Shahiyah would not be a havdalah. And therefore, if I need a havdalah, I need a distinction between chatas and oila. Memela, if shahiyah won't be that, the delaying won't be that. It has to be that I cut both simanim. Therefore, if you cut both simanim by chatas, you don't have a distinction. It's puzzle. Whereas the Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon holds shahiyah b'siman sheni b'oif is ma'akiv. So memela, you'll never have the situation. Again, since shahiyah b'siman sheni is mashma, you must cut through both simanim before Rav Basa. You have your distinction. Guys, you'll have your distinction. I'm going ahead. I'm cutting. I better get, fellas. It's a time. Let's say it's a time of 5 seconds. Chatas oif is going to be 8 seconds. Says Rabbi Shimon, you better get to the 5 before the 8. So therefore, you have your distinction. Whereas according to the Tanakama, you can get to the 8 without a distinction. Memela, if according to the Tanakama, if you're going to cut both simanim, you won't have a distinction. So according to the first Reb Chisda, the teretz is whether mitzvah is required or not. Again, the teretz is the same. One, the Tanakama you have no distinction except havdalah, except cutting through simanim. And Rabbi Shimon, I have a distinction. So once I have a distinction, they're not the same. So according to Rav Chisda, the distinction is mitzvah. According to Rava, the distinction is whether it's shehi or not. Are you with me? No. Clueless. Clueless? Guys, clueless? Again? Okay. You have the Eagles and the Giants. No, Eagles and the Jets. Okay, Eagles and the Jets. They both wear green. Okay. So I need a distinction between them. I have a very easy distinction between them. But let's say, for some reason, it's more mistaba to say that the Eagles begin to lose than the Jets to win. Let's say they're both wearing green. I need another distinction, right? Or else you mix up the Eagles with the Jets. So it's the same thing over here. I need a distinction between the Chatas and the Oila, or else you're going to mix them up. Loit Rav Chisda, Loit the Tanakama, the only distinction I can have is cutting to simanim, because there is no other distinction. Why? Because mitzvah is required by chatas. So that's required by chatas. That's a green uniform. If it's required by oila, that's a green uniform. So the only distinction I can have is the two simanim. Memela, if you cut the two simanim chatas, you're out. Loit Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon, no. You don't have to do mitzvah. You don't need the other distinction. Why? Because the Jets uniform is a certain green, and this is another green. In other words, there's a distinction without that. And memela what? Okay. What's the distinction like Rava? Whether delaying, but here's what happens, guys. By you have the mahalach now. So I'm just once I just have to just fit in mechanically the distinction, right? That's what I'm doing right now. The mechanical distinction is the following: chatas oif automatically is delaying in the malika, automatically, because it's what you do is you're breaking the bone, labrius. You're breaking the bone, and then you're going ahead and you're cutting one siman, but you're then delaying. So that one siman with the is a delay. Do you have to do that? Don't you have to do that? If you hold delaying is a problem, then you have a distinction. If you hold delaying is not a problem, you don't have a distinction, right? Here's the siman. So now you understand number two. If you hold shehiyah b'siman sheni is not a problem, then you need another distinction, which is cutting both simanim. No, shehiyah is a problem, so I have my distinction. Good. Abaya says, no, the distinction is whether you chitach roiv basa b'chatas loy whether you have to cut the roiv not. So if I don't have to cut the roiv, I know by oila I can't, guys. By oila I can't because I can't delay. So he also even she is ma'akiv. So memela, since cutting roiv basa is not a problem, I'm going to want to have a distinction. Therefore, it's possible if I cut the two. Whereas according to Rabbi Elazar Shimon, roiv basa is a problem. So I'll never mix up the two because I'll have roiv basa by chatas, which I won't have by oila, because roiv basa will be shehiyah by oila. Okay, I think I'm feeling the screen a little more understanding. All it took was mentioning gangrene and it was all over.
No, it's because of the eagles. Go birds. Chatasof.
I wonder which is the oil and which is the chatas. But the eagles or the jets. Definitely the jets are a kapara for me, so it's a chatas.
The ganze Sache is
I'll give you the oil. Lenny, you could have the oil which is in the David Hashem. I'm stuck with the chatas, the kapara for watching that stupid team. Okay, anyway, let's see. But Kishmak, guys, you hear the chilik now. Now I'm going to go through the whole Gemara. It's going to be very, very clear. Let's go through the Gemara now. Starting from the top. My son, the like Rabbi Elazar Shimon, the Tanya. Elazar Shimon, Shamati Shemavdilim Bechatas Ha'oif. I heard you can cut both simanim Bechatas Ha'oif. My binayu, what's the svaras hamachlekes? Rav Chisda mitzri chatas ha'oif ma'akev v'kabinayu. Whether you have other distinction. Tanakam esava mitzri chatas ha'oif ma'akev. You know what? You have to do mitzri b'chatas ha'oif. Memela, I have to do mitzvah by oila. I have to do mitzvah by chatas. I have no other distinction. So what will the distinction be? It has to be what? The fact that you cut both simanim. So if you do, you don't have a distinction. Therefore, Tanakam says fasol. The kivin the mitzvah dam ma'akiv kavin ma'isa oila b'chatas oif. For Elazar Shimon Sava mitzvah chatas oif lai ma'akiv. It's not ma'akiv. Memela, don't do mitzvah. Don't do mitzvah, and everything's okay. Because and therefore you'll have your distinction by you didn't do mitzvah. Oila needs mitzvah. Chatas doesn't need mitzvah, and therefore if you separate the two simanim, it's okay. Rava Omar, Shehiyah b'siman sheni ba'oila sa'oif ma'akiv. Whether delaying by cutting the second siman by oila sa'oif is ma'akiv or not. Do we go ahead and say it's like shchita or not? Rashi, guys, brings a very interesting Rashi. By an animal, it's not going to die till you get both simanim. But by an oif, it's not true, because midaraisa, guys, you only need one siman. So memela, the second malika is not part of the action of killing the bird, because with shchita, one would do the job. So memela, that's the swara. It's not ma'akiv because you're not killing the bird with it. By shchita, you have to get both simanim to kill it. By here, you only get one. So memela, you can hold shehiyah, which is a din in delaying, which is a din in the shchita, and l'chayr in the malika also would not be a problem. Why? Because just like shchita of one would be, so too what malika of one would be. So therefore, she would not be a problem.
Which Rashi is that?
Which Rashi? It's a simanim. It's ba'olas oif hitzrichu be simanim. Okay, so now Rava Amar Shehiyah b'siman sheni ba'olas oif ma'akiv. It could be nayu. Tanakam Esava Shehiyah b'siman sheni ba'olas oif loy ma'akiv. So since it's not ma'akiv, right? So you don't have a distinction between the chatas and the oila, because the chatas automatically is shehiyah, guys. The chatas automatically is shehiyah because you're getting one siman and you're getting roiv basar and you have to go around and get it. Memela, since it's not, you don't have to do that. I need another distinction. What's that other distinction? You don't cut two simanim. V'afagat the shahaya ka'avin ma'isa oilas b'chatas. Even b'siman loy ma'akiv. V'afagat the shahaya. Even though what shahaya you delayed ka'avin ma'isa oila b'chatas. Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon Sava ma'akiv v'kiyum d'shahaya mechatich basa ba'almahu. You're just delaying. You don't need it. And it's Abaye Omer roiv basa ma'akiv. Whether roiv basa is ma'akiv and either minayu. And this machlokes between Abaye and Rava, how to explain the Mishnah, is the machlokes between Rav Zeir and Rav Shmuel. We'll plug to Rav Zeir, Rav Shmuel, Rav Yitzchak. Chad Omar Shahaya Shia b'simin sheni b'olis oif ma'akiv. It could be nayu. That's the Abaye's teretz. That's Rava's teretz. V'chad Omar roiv basa ma'akiv. It could be nayu. Okay. Mechlal said you can infer the beinin the roiv basa b'tchila, that initially you have to put roiv basa in. Now this is good guess. Good Tanya. Usually, guys, this is very nice diak. When Rashi v'hatanya 99.9% of the times is a kasha. When it's not, what's Rashi going to say? B'nichusa. Rashi is going to say it's a proof, right? V'hatanya. Guys, Rashi doesn't say it over here. Rashi doesn't say it over here. But if you look at the Yud Aleph in the Shita, look at Yud Aleph in the Shita. He changes the Gersa. In Ditanya. So Rashi doesn't have to say Benichusa here. You know why? Because it's obviously a proof. Ditanya, not Vihatanya, we learned. Ditanya. Ditanya, Kate said Molkin Chatas Oif. How do you do Malikin Chatas Oif? Chaytich Shidro Mafrekes, Beloy Reiv Basa. You cut through the spinal column and the majority, and without Reiv Basa. Ad Shemagil Leveshet Oilakana, till you reach the trachea of the esophagus. Hegil Leveshet Lakana, Chaytich Simin Echad, Ruboy, Reiv Basa Imai, and Reiv Basa. So you see you need Reiv Basa, Uba Oila Shnayim, Reiv Shnayim. Okay, or majority. Okay, Yaitzimid Varenu, guys, we have shot in the, so let's just Chazariba. We have machlokes whether you need chat, whether you need if you're moilik both simonim by chatas oif, what's the din? So we have the Tanakama saying it's pasul, those of Hashem saying it's kasha. If Chistis Svara, now there's the way to explain it. If we need a distinction that chatas and oif should be different, so if you hold that it's ma'akev, it's because there's no other distinction. If you hold that it's ma'akev, meaning that if you cut two, it's no good, it's because you hold that then the chatas oif and the oilus oif can be the same. So memela, like Rav Chisda, if mitzui by chatas oif is required, it's required by oilus oif, it's required by chatas oif, and memela, the only distinction I'll have is the two simonim. Like Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon, mitzui the chatas oif is not ma'akev, so I don't have to do mitzui. So since I don't have to do mitzui, therefore I have a distinction between the chatas and oilus oif that you have to do mitzui. Memela, if I cut by chatas oif both simonim, it's not a problem. Rava says shehia, delaying, and the second siman by oilus oif is not ma'akev. So since it's not ma'akev, automatically chatas oif, guys, you have shehia. That's the point. Automatically by chatas oif you have shehia. So therefore, if it's not ma'akev, then I would have shehia by both. Therefore, the only distinction I can have is two simanim. Whereas Rav Elazar Shimon says, no, shehia is ma'akev. Since shehia is ma'akev, I have a distinction between oilus oif and chatas oif. Memela, if I cut both simanim, it's not a problem. Abaya says, well, you're cutting reiv basa, but chatas is not ma'akev. Now, automatically, you're going to cut reiv basa. So now, if chitach reiv basa by chatas is not ma'akev, so what other distinction do I have? I wrote down here on the side. Look what I wrote over here. Thus, by skipping this step and cutting both simanim, if you're skipping reiv basa, then chatas and oila are the same. Before he's doing ma'isa oila to protect against this possibility, the Chum said anytime chatas oif you mavdil, it's pasul because again you could skip this step and then it'd be the same as what is the chatas, and that would be the distinction between all of them. I thank everyone for listening. I appreciate. Have all a great day. Be sure to tell somebody. Go Birds.
Shabbos al haben aliyah.
Yeah.
Could you send the chart out so that I could print it?
I definitely send the chart.